Hey everyone, it's Megan here from Meghan Makes Do, and today I'm going to show you how to make the Emory Pullover. The Emory is a lacy summer long sleeve top, and it's made with Lion Brand Botanic, which is 100% tencel lyocell. It's a weight for a yarn, and it comes in some gorgeous colors. A tip for this yarn is that because it can be kind of splitty, I like to work from the outside of the skein versus pulling from the center. It seems to keep those the fibers twisted together a little bit better. So go ahead and check out the description below for the amounts that you'll need, but I do recommend working from the outside instead of the inside of the skein. And then you'll also need a 4mm crochet hook. For this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you the basics of this pattern, but it is recommended that you follow along with the written pattern, which you can find the link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so for this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you just a tiny sample of what the back panel will look like. Since the back panel's pretty large, it's hard to fit it all on the screen. So we're just going to be making a little sample, and you'll notice that our sizes for the Emory Pullover are combined. So make sure that you check out the size chart on the blog or in the PDF so that you know which size would fit you best, depending on how much ease you'd like. So the pattern is written as a multiple of 9 plus 1. And when we start, we're going to add an extra chain for that turning chain. So for the sample, I'm just going to make 38 chains. So I have 36 as my multiple of 9, plus 1 would be 37, plus an extra one for the turning chain of the first row. Okay, so now that we have all of our chains here, we're going to start by working our row 1, which we're going to work into the second chain from the hook and make a single crochet. Then we're going to chain 3, skip 3 chains, and work another single crochet. Then we're going to chain 7, oops, see, this yarn can split. And then we'll work another single crochet in the next chain. And then we'll repeat that. So chain 3, skip 3, single crochet. So that's one repeat made. And then we're just going to continue to repeat that all the way across the row. So we'll chain 3 again, skip 3, single crochet, chain 7, and then single crochet in the next chain, chain 3, skip 3, and single crochet. So you're going to repeat that all the way across, ending with a single crochet in that last chain stitch. Okay, so we're getting to our last stitch here. We'll work our last single crochet, and that's the end of row 1. So here you can see that I have 4 of these chain 7 arches. So depending on what size you're making, you're going to have anywhere from 10 to 18 of those for your back panel. For row 2, we're going to chain 1 and turn. We're going to single crochet into the first stitch. And then we're going to skip over our chain 3s, and we're just going to be working into our chain 7 space. And this is where we're going to make those beautiful arch stitches. So we're going to double crochet 13 stitches into our chain 7 space. And you'll notice in the written pattern, if you're following along with that I don't have exact stitch counts for each row, since those will change. So I tried to make my counts at the end something easy for you to count, just to make sure that you are on the right track with this pattern, since it's not a traditional kind of stitch. So once you've completed your 13 double crochets into the chain 7, we're going to just simply single crochet into the next single crochet stitch. So we're going to skip over all of our chain 3s that we made from the row before, and we're just working into the single crochets or the chain 7 space. So that's one arch made. Now I'm going to skip over the chain 3s again and work 13 double crochet into the next chain 7 space. And then you'll just continue to repeat that across the entire row, ending with a single crochet in your last stitch of row 1. Okay, so here's our last stitch, which is a single crochet, and we've completed row 2, which is the right side of our work. So whenever you're making those 13 double crochets to make those little arches, you'll know that that is the right side of your work facing. Okay, so now for row 3, we're going to chain 5. This counts as a double treble crochet. We're going to turn our work, and then we're going to just be kind of counting into the arch stitches. So we have those 13 double crochets on each arch. You want to count up and work into the 6th stitch of that arch. We're going to double crochet into the 6th stitch, chain 3, double crochet into the 7th stitch of the arch, chain 3, and then double crochet into the 8th stitch of the arch. So we're making these double crochet chain 3 clusters basically into those 3 stitches on the top of the arch, and then we're skipping over the rest of the stitches. So don't worry about the rest of that or the single crochet. Start counting up on the next arch stitch, and again we're going to double crochet into the 6th stitch of the arch, chain 3, double crochet into the 7th stitch of the arch, chain 3, and then double crochet into the 8th stitch of the arch. So we're just working into those arch stitches, and we're doing the same thing in each one, skipping over all the other stitches, and we'll repeat that all the way across until all of your arches have those double crochet chain 3 clusters worked into them. Okay, so I've just finished. You can see I have those clusters made in every single arch all the way across. And then we're going to end this row working into that last single crochet, and we're going to make a double treble crochet. So you want to yarn over 3 times, insert your hook and draw up a loop, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through 2 until we've finished that complete double treble crochet. So that's the end of row 3. You can see that we're starting to get some of those lacy details in here. And now for row 4, we're going to chain 3. This counts as a double crochet. We're going to turn. And now we're going to be skipping over that first stitch and the first double crochet. And we're going to be working into those chain stitches that we made before. So those chain 3s. We're going to double crochet into that first chain stitch. And then we're going to chain 1, skip the next chain, and double crochet into that 3rd chain stitch. So we're working into the chain stitches, not around them. Then we're going to chain 3, and then we're going to double crochet into the next chain stitch, chain 1, and double crochet into that 3rd chain stitch. Okay, so that's like our little cluster that we're making on top of the arches. So we're skipping over the next 2 double crochet, and we're just going to repeat that on each of those double crochet chain 3 clusters. So double crochet into that first chain stitch, chain 1, skip the next chain, and double crochet into that 3rd chain stitch. Then chain 3, and double crochet into the next chain stitch, chain 1, skip the next chain, double crochet into that last chain stitch of that cluster. And we just repeat that across all of the arches until each arch has that set of stitches worked into it. Okay, so I'm working on my last set here. And then to end this row, we are going to work a double crochet into the top of the chain 5. So this is what we will have at the end of row 4. So you can see that we're just kind of making stitches into the arches, and we're kind of, this is like a whole repeat. It'll be like these 4 rows over and over again. So you'll be able to keep track by counting your arches. So then for row 5, we're going to chain 6. This counts as a double crochet and a chain 3. We'll turn our work, and now we're just going to be working into these chain 3 spaces from the row before and in between some of those double crochet stitches. So we're setting ourselves up again for the next row of those arches. So chain 6, skip over the other stitches, work directly into that chain 3 space. We're going to single crochet, chain 7, and single crochet all into that same chain 3 space. So it's similar to row 1, but a little bit different. Then we're going to chain 3, and now we're going to double crochet in between these 2 double crochets. So you'll have 2 double crochets on either side. You want to double crochet in between those 2 sets. Then chain 3 again, and work a single crochet, chain 7, single crochet into the next chain 3 space. And then just repeat that all the way across. Okay, so we're working on our last chain 7 cluster. Now we are going to chain 3, and then we're going to kind of skip over these last few stitches and work a double crochet into the top of the chain 3 from the row below. And that is the end of row 5. So you're just going to be repeating rows 2 through 5, continuing on. You want to have a total of 40 rows for the back panel, and you'll end on a row 4 repeat to finish. So it'll be straight across at the bottom. Okay, so this is what your back panel will look like. It'll be very similar. Have all these arches, all these rows. And so because we're working top down, when you end, it's going to look like this. We're ending on a row 4 repeat. But when we actually wear our item, it's going to be flipped over, and those arches are going to kind of make little U's instead. So this is the direction that your stitches will lay when you're actually wearing your piece. So once you have your back panel finished, again, you can adjust the number of rows if you want your top to be a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. Totally up to you. It's your preference. Just know that when you block it, it will stretch out a little bit. So keep that in mind if you're adding or subtracting rows here. But you'll end on a row 4 repeat. You'll have 40 rows total. And once you finish your back panel, I'll meet you back here and show you how to start on your front panel as well. Okay, so our front panel is also made top down, but we want to create a little bit of room for our neckline. We don't want it to be like right up against our necks. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with 2 separate pieces, but they'll be exactly the same. So depending on what size you're making, you'll have anywhere from 3 to 7 arches in your front left and front right panel, but they're going to look exactly alike, and then you'll work a total of 7 rows on each side, and then don't fasten off quite yet. Wait until we're ready to join them. So you'll have 2 of those full arch rows, and then you'll work a row 3 repeat just on either one to start, and then when we do our row 4 repeat, that's when we'll join them. So lay out your pieces. You're going to fasten off your one that's going to be on the left hand side when you're looking at it from the top down, but it's going to be like your left panel. So then with the right one, you still have your yarn attached. You want to flip them both over so right sides are facing up, and we're going to be working a row 4 repeat across the right hand side. We'll chain some stitches, and then we'll finish our row 4 repeat on the other side, and this is going to join those 2 pieces together. So we have chained 3 to start our row 4, and now we are double crocheting into that first chain stitch, chain 1, skip the next chain, double crochet into that third chain stitch in that little cluster group, chain 3, skip over the double crochet into the first chain, chain 1, skip the next chain, work a double crochet into that last chain of that cluster. Okay, and just repeat that all the way across until you get to our last stitch, which will be working into the chain 5. Okay, so we're finishing up our last double crochet here. And then we're going to double crochet into the top of the chain 5, just as we normally would. So we finished row 4 on this right side of our piece. Now we need to chain, and then we'll join into the next side and work the rest of row 4. So we want to have 4 arches basically in the middle. That will be our neckline. And 4 times 9 is 36, but since we already have one of those stitches that we just worked into, we're only going to need to chain 35. So chain 35 here. All sizes have the same width of the neckline since everyone's necks are roughly about the same size. So chain 35, and then we will go ahead and start row 4, a row 4 repeat into the next panel, so the left panel of our top. Okay, so here you can see we're going to kind of stretch it out. Those chain stitches are going to be like the bottom of our neckline, and we want to work directly into our left side. So this stitch is going to be a little flimsy. We're going to work a double crochet. So instead of chaining 3 here like we normally would, since we've already fastened off, kind of tighten up that stitch. We'll weave that end in eventually, but you're going to double crochet into the first stitch, and then double crochet into the chain stitch, chain 1, skip the next chain stitch, and work a double crochet into that third chain stitch of that group, chain 3, and then double crochet into the next chain stitch, chain 1, skip a chain, and double crochet into that third one. So we're doing the exact same thing, just continue working across, ending with a double crochet into the top of that chain 5. Okay, so we're finishing up the last few stitches of our row 4 repeat, and now our pieces are attached and we can continue on just working as normal. This next row, this row 5 repeat where we're setting up those chain 7 arches, is going to be a little bit different than a normal row 5 repeat, just because we're going to be working into some of those chain stitches that we made. So it's a long row. You'll look in the written pattern and you'll be like, what is this? That's okay. Just follow along the best you can. I do recommend, watching this video. You can watch it multiple times if you need to, but I promise, like, once you have the pattern in your head and you know the repeats, it'll make sense. So we're starting with that chain 6, and then we're single crocheting, chaining 7, single crocheting into the chain 3 space, and then chain 3, and then double crochet in between those 2 sets of double crochet, just as we normally would for this row. Chain 3, and then single crochet, chain 7, single crochet into the chain 3 space. So we're going to work across as we normally would on this. We're working on the left side of our piece. And then once we get to that last stitch of the front left, it's going to look just slightly different when we work across those chains. So just continue across until you get to this last chain 7 arch that you make. Okay, so here we want to chain 3, and then instead of working a double crochet into that last stitch, we're actually going to work a single crochet into that last stitch. So it's going to kind of make our neckline curve a little bit more by bringing that down. So single crochet into the last stitch. Now we've reached our chains. So we're going to chain 3, skip 3 chains, single crochet into the next, chain 7, and you'll notice it's kind of similar to that beginning first row of the back panel and for these first 2 sides of your front panel. So chain 7 and then single crochet into the next chain. And then again, chain 3 and skip 3. Single crochet into the next chain. Chain 7. Oh, sorry, chain 3, skip 3. I'm getting ahead of myself. Then we're going to chain 7. Oops. And then single crochet into the next chain. Gotta make sure I get through the right chain without splitting all my yarn. I do recommend going slow throughout this process just because this yarn can be pretty splitty. But chain 3, skip 3, single crochet into the next chain. And then chain 3, skip 3, single crochet again. Chain 7, single crochet into the next chain, chain 3, skip 3, single crochet into the next chain. And what we're doing here is we're just basically in the center here in the neckline, we're working like a row 1 repeat, and you'll end up with, you should have 4 of those chain 7 arches in the center, and then you'll have either 3 to 7 on either side as well. So you should end up with the same amount of arches as you do your back panel at this point. But once we get all the way across these chains, we'll end up skipping 3 and then working a single crochet into that first stitch of our right panel. So just as we did on that last stitch of the left panel, we'll work a single crochet into that first stitch of the right, and then continue on working a row 5 as we normally would across the rest of the right side. So just continue on working all the way across the row. This is the end, and then we'll just work the normal repeats from then on. So you'll repeat rows 2 through 5, making sure that you have a total of 40 rows starting from that top shoulder, working down. So you want to just make sure that you have, if you added or subtracted rows for your back panel, make sure that you add or subtract the same number of rows for your front panel so that the front and back are the same length. So now you can just follow along with the back panel instructions, which is just a row 2 through 5 repeat until you have a total of 40 rows. Okay, so here you can see this is our back panel, and I have the wrong side facing up, and you can see that our arches are now downward facing, but you can see this is where we ended down here. I'm going to grab my front panel and lay that on top with the right side facing up, and you can see our neckline looks really nice right here. We want to lay them down so that, you know, our edges are all even and nicely together. We've got some long pieces here that we can use for seaming the sides if we'd like, or you can start with fresh pieces. But we're going to start by seaming the shoulders across the top, and then we will leave some armhole space here for making our sleeves, and then we'll seam the sides. So I'm going to show you kind of what I prefer to do for seaming, but you can use whichever seaming method you prefer as well. But we're just going to be doing 4 seams total, 2 across the top for the shoulders and 2 on the sides. So we're going to start with the shoulders. I want to make sure that I'm lining up all my stitches. I'm lining up my arch stitches here. I've left some of my ends unwoven because I like to weave those into the seam once it's made. I feel like it adds a little bit of extra security there. But I'm using a large blunt tip needle, and I'm just using the end of yarn that I have here that I left. And we're going to use, I like to use the mattress stitch to do this. So I have a long piece of yarn here, and I'm just going to leave a longer tail for weaving in the end later. And then I'm just zigzagging across, working from the center of the seam out into each panel, making sure that I'm working through 1 stitch on each side, trying to line those up and keep them going through the same stitch on both panels, basically. So we just zigzag back and forth. We will be working through those beginning chain stitches. Since we've worked this top from the top down, our shoulders are going to be where those chain stitches are. So just continue to work back and forth with the mattress stitch until you've gotten your shoulder seam all connected. And then just be aware that this yarn can split, so make sure that when you're working with your needle, you're going under those loops of yarn, not through the yarn. You don't want to have any splits here. But you'll just seam both shoulders together using your preferred method of seaming. Okay, so here you can see I've got my shoulder seam all together, and now that my shoulders are seamed, I can start working on my side seam. So in the written pattern, I have instructed as far as like how many rows down you want to leave open or unseamed. So depending on what size you're making, you're going to leave around 11 to about 16 rows unworked. That way you'll have plenty of room to add your sleeve in there. So for the size extra large / 2X, which is what I'm making, I'm going to end by leaving about 14 of those rows unworked. And then I'll seam the rest of it. So from that 14 row mark all the way down is where I'm going to seam. Again, you may need to adjust this depending on how you want your top to fit. You want to make sure that you have enough room to work a multiple of 9 stitches around that armhole. So I'm going to use a stitch marker to mark where that 14th row is on both the back and front panel. I want it to line up exactly. And then I'm just going to put my stitch marker in to hold that place for me so I know where to start my seam. And then I like to seam from the underarm spot down. That way if I need to add any rows after I block it, or I want to adjust things at the bottom of my top, it's a little bit easier. And if you are working with a fresh piece of yarn here, then you can easily undo a little bit of the seam at that underarm if you realize later that you need a couple more rows in order to get the number of stitches that you need for the sleeves in there. So it's a good idea to kind of leave these unworked and not seam those or weave those little ends from the seam in until you're all done. But I'm just making sure here that I've got enough room for my armhole. For the extra large 2X size, you'll want your armhole to be about 18 inches all the way around, so about 9 inches from the top. And then you can see here that I'm starting to seam my sides. Again, I'm using the mattress stitch method. It's going to look a little different when you're doing it on the sides here, but I'm trying to make sure that I am lining up those edge stitches of my rows and working through the same spots on both sides. And you can see here too that I did leave where I had attached new yarn on the edge. I've left those ends because, again, like I said before, I like to weave those ends into a seam as often as possible. I feel like it gives me a little bit cleaner of a look, especially working with this type of yarn where you will see some of those woven ends if it's right in the middle of your piece. So where possible, I would try to join and attach new yarn at the ends or beginning of rows versus right in the center of a row. But I'm just going to use the mattress stitch to seam both of my sides from the armholes down, and you'll see this in the written pattern as well. And it'll tell you how many rows to leave unworked for your armholes. So once you have both your shoulders seamed and your sides seamed, I can meet you back here and I'll show you how to add your sleeves. Okay, so here you can see we have our sleeve opening, our armhole, and I like to attach my yarn in the side seam to start. So I'm going to grab some yarn and my hook, and we're going to attach the yarn in that seam, chain one, and then single crochet into that same spot that we joined. And then we want to single crochet evenly all the way around the armhole, making sure that we have the number of stitches indicated for your size. So I'm making the extra large / 2X size, so I want to have 81 stitches all the way around. So here you can see I'm working into those chain stitches, but I want to have about 40 / 41 stitches on each side, making sure that I have 81 at the end. So make sure that you are getting the right amount of stitches in. Again, it's not an exact thing that I can tell you exactly where to put each stitch. It's going to be kind of your preference. So it may take a couple tries to get the right number of stitches around your armhole, but you'll have a multiple of 9 stitches going all the way around your armhole for your sleeve. And again, you're going to be doing this on both sides, but you can start with one sleeve and then switch and do the next sleeve when you're done. So I'm just going to keep continuing to single crochet all the way around my armhole, making sure that I have a multiple of 9 when I end. I forgot to mention too that your right side should be facing you when you start this row 1. So then we'll end our row 1 by slip stitching to that first stitch to join. And then we're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn. So we're going to be working in turned rounds for our sleeve. So now the wrong side will be facing us as we work. Right now, we're going to single crochet into the same stitch as our join. It's going to be a little tight here, but you can do it. And then we'll chain 3, skip 3 stitches, single crochet in the next, chain 7, and then single crochet into the next stitch. Then we'll chain 3 again, skip 3, and single crochet. And then we just are going to repeat that going all the way around our armhole. So we're setting up our arches here, our chain 7 arches, just as we did for our front and back panels. Okay, so we've made it all the way around. We're ending with a chain 3, skip 3, and then we're going to slip stitch into that first stitch to join. Okay, so now for row 3, we're going to chain 1 and turn. The right side should be facing us now. We're going to start with a single crochet into the same stitch as our join. And then we'll be working 13 double crochets into that chain 7 space. So our sleeves are worked exactly the same as our front and back panels. We're just working in turned rounds instead of turned rows this time. So we'll be joining at the end of each round. So work your 13 double crochet into your chain 7 space. And then we will single crochet into that single crochet stitch. And then again, work 13 double crochet in each of those chain 7s around and single crochet into each single crochet until you've gotten all the way around your armhole. Okay, so now we can slip stitch to that first single crochet to join. There we go. All right, and then now for round 4, we're going to chain 5 and turn our work. And then just like a normal repeat, we're going to skip the first 5. We're going to double crochet into the 6th double crochet of that arch, chain 3, double crochet into the 7th stitch of the arch, chain 3, and double crochet into the 8th stitch of that arch. And we'll repeat that all the way around, working those little clusters into each arch all the way around our sleeve. Okay, so then when we get to the end of this round, we're going to slip stitch into the top of the chain 5 to join. And now for round 5, we'll chain 3 and turn. And then we will work a double crochet into that first chain stitch. And then chain 1, skip the next chain and work into that 3rd chain stitch. And then chain 3, double crochet into that first chain of the next set. Chain 1, skip over, chain, and double crochet into the next. So exact same as our front and back panels, and you'll just continue to work those same little cluster sets into each arch area of the previous row. So continue around, repeating this for round 5 until you've gotten all the way around your sleeve. Okay, so we're working that last double crochet stitch here, and then we will slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 to join. Okay, so now we are going to chain 6 for our round 6. That counts as a double crochet and a chain 3. We'll turn our work. And now we're going to be working a single crochet, chain 7, single crochet into that chain 3 space. So now we're working around where we'll be making those chain 7 arches. Then we chain 3 and work a double crochet in between those 2 sets of double crochets. Chain 3, and again single crochet, chain 7, single crochet into the chain 3 space. So just repeat this all the way around until you've gotten all the way around your sleeve. Okay, so when we get all the way around, we'll chain 3, and then we're going to slip stitch to the 3rd chain of our turning chain. And that will join this round. And then we can just repeat rounds 3 through 6 all the way down our sleeve. We're going to be ending with a row 3 repeats so that the bottom of our sleeve gets that nice arch detail. It gives it kind of a more like romantic feel. But again, you can adjust the sleeve length, especially since we're working from the top of the sleeve down. You can easily add or subtract rounds here. So I've left suggested round counts for each size. Please note that the smaller sizes will have more rounds for their sleeve since the drop shoulder doesn't come across as far as the larger sizes. So since you'll need to repeat like a whole set of 4 row repeats in order to get that detail at the end, if you would rather have a straight across sleeve or you just need a little bit of length or a little bit shorter, you can definitely end on a different row repeat. I just don't recommend ending on a row 6 repeat because then you have those little chain 7 arches which can get caught on things. But you can easily adjust the length of your sleeve, and once you have one of those sleeves done, just repeat the process on the other side. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is add a simple single crochet border around our neckline. This will just give it a nice, clean, finished look. So I like to start in the top left shoulder seam. And so we're just going to attach our yarn into that seam. And then we'll chain 1 and single crochet into that same spot that we joined our yarn. And then we're just going to single crochet evenly all the way around our neckline. So down this front edge here, I worked about 21 stitches. And then across the front and the back, I work about 35. So you'll have 21 on either side of your neckline and 35 on the front and back, which will give you a total of approximately 112 single crochets. So if you have slightly more, slightly less, it's totally fine. The key here is just to make sure that you have the same amount on either side and the same amount on the front as you do the back. But just take your time and single crochet evenly all the way around your neckline, and you'll end with a slip stitch into that first stitch to join. Okay, so now that our single crochet collar edge is done, we can fasten off our yarn, leaving a bit of a tail for weaving in. Pull that through, and now you can see we just have a nicer, cleaner looking neckline for our Emory pullover. Kind of pulls everything together, rounds out that neckline for us. So the last thing to do is just weave in any remaining ends, and then I do highly recommend blocking this. It's going to open up those stitches and it's going to get you the proper measurements that you need for your size. So I like to wet block, but you can use whichever method you prefer, and then you'll be all done with your Emory pullover.